Good day, guys, and welcome back to your English Aussie. Today, I'm going to be talking through 3 of your teams that you have submitted to me. I will be giving feedback on those teams and rating them. I'll also, if you want to know how you can get your team rated in future videos, stick around as I let you know exactly how you can do that. I'll also be discussing some of the more overlooked players so far this season in FPL. And I will be talking through our free members giveaway in the Game Week 1 live stream. So stick around to find out all that good stuff. Strap on your boots and let's dive into the video. So first up here, we've got John Flanagan's team. And overall, I think this looks like a really nice team, John, especially if you're looking to bench boost in Game Week 1. 15 players, all likely to start. Hopeful to start, should I say. And I'll start with the goalkeepers. So here you've got a rotation of Sanchez and Verbruggen in goal. Sanchez obviously at 5 million, a little bit more expensive with Verbruggen at 4.5. I think Sanchez is really nice in goal. Chelsea have obviously got a really nice run of early fixtures. I think on the Verbruggen side, you could either consider going down to maybe a 4 million goalkeeper if you don't want to spend that extra 0.5 million on a second goalkeeper, given you've already gone for a 5 million goalkeeper. If you're potentially looking to use your wild card early, it might be worth saving that extra 0.5 million elsewhere. If you are looking for a 4.5 million goalie, I would really consider Kelleher as a replacement for Verbruggen in goal there. He rotates really nicely with Sanchez all the way through to game week 14, really. If you exclude the game week 7 where they have 2 of the top teams, pretty much every week in between is a fantastic defensive fixture. Kelleher was really good for Liverpool last season, and I think Brentford potentially need to be a little bit more defensively solid this season, especially having lost Mbumo to Manchester United. And they do have a set-piece coach now as a manager, so maybe he'll shore things up a little bit more defensively. Moving on to your defence, Frimpong, De Kuiper, who I might be butchering his name, Milenkovic, Konsa, and Rodon. So I think Rodon's a really nice pick at 4 million if he locks down a starting spot alongside Bijol at Leeds, which it looks like at the moment those 2 would probably be the starting 2 centre-backs given the pre-season starts. He's likely to start in game week 1, given that Bijol is suspended in that first game week. So that works really well for your bench boost. And then if it happens that he doesn't make it as the starting centre-back, you can fix that later down the line in your wild card. At the moment, I think I expect Bijol and Rodon to start. Rodon also is probably the one of the 2 defenders who attacks that first ball, and therefore will be able to get those defensive contribution points due to being the defender who gets more of those clearances. That's a sort of a similar trend that we see with that sort of Murillo-Milenkovic partnership as well, where Murillo attacks the first ball, Milenkovic covers a little bit more. So yeah, I think Rodon a really nice pick at 4 million. De Kuiper, I'm not super keen on this pick. He's obviously the new signing at Brighton to replace Pt.1. He took free kicks and penalties in the Belgian league. And did have some great returns, some good assists and goal record. However, he was playing in the Belgian league. It isn't the strongest league in the world. I do think he'll probably take free kicks for Brighton, given that Pt.1 previously used to take quite a few of them for Brighton as well. However, I do doubt he will be on penalties for Brighton. At 4.5 million, I think there are some other options out there that might be better. Perhaps a Mark Guay at Crystal Palace, who can also pick up those defensive contribution points. Maybe an Aaron Wan-Bissaka at West Ham, who can pull the assists and also does rack up some of those contribution points for West Ham. So I think he's somebody that I may look to move. But again, Brighton also with not the best fixtures from a defensive standpoint over those sort of first 4, 5, 6 game weeks as well. So consider that if you are planning on playing that bench boost in game week 1, maybe you do want to go for an Aaron Wan-Bissaka, given that West Ham have Sunderland. Maybe you even want to go for a Mickey van der Ven. Think that maybe he might pick up some defensive contribution points as well as they have that game against Burnley. So those maybe could be a couple of replacements for Konsa and De Kuyper if you are planning to bench boost in game week 1. If not, I like Konsa as a pick. Aston Villa have some good fixtures early, so I like this either way, really. On Frimpong, personally, I think the new rules introduced into FPL this year regarding these defensive contributions are really overpowered. I think tall centre-backs like a Virgil van Dijk or players from teams that have very low possession and therefore constantly having to be in those defensive actions. Think Nottingham Forest, who play on the counter-attack. Think Everton, who play quite a direct style of football and have low possession. That is where there are a lot of gains to be made. Now, looking at the statistics around those defensive contributions, out of the 6 million or very high-priced attacking defenders, Virgil van Dijk stands out as one who racks up about, on average, 8 per game. So you would expect him to sort of get an extra 20-odd points during the season. And that 20 points is essentially for defenders three additional goals or 7 additional assists, which I'm not sure that it's worth having Frimpong over Van Dijk, given that Van Dijk's also going to score 3 or 4 goals in a season just from corners as well. So for me, I would go for one of those overpowered tall centre-backs. I think if you want one of these price points at 6 million, Van Dijk is my favourite for me. On the flip side of things, that Frimpong has looked really nice for Liverpool in pre-season. However, I do also think that Conor Bradley is going to take a few minutes off him throughout the season. He's likely to probably not start every game for Liverpool, so also bear that in mind. Milenkovic is the final defender you've got. Love him. Think he's a fantastic option. Really nice. I think it's a real toss-up between him and Murillo, so a good pick, and Nottingham Forest with some great defensive fixtures over those first 6 game weeks for me. Into the midfield, Wirtz, I think he's a good pick. I think he'll settle quickly into that Liverpool team. They often acclimatise, should you say, players very well into their team. So I think he is a nice pick. I do actually prefer Gakpo to Wirtz for goal threat. And given Liverpool want to sell Diaz and Diaz wants to move on from Liverpool, Gakpo might be playing a lot more minutes this season. Maybe a controversial thought, but I like Gakpo, especially at that 7.5 mil price point, to save an extra million. No questions over Wirtz. I think he is still a nice pick. Salah as well, no dramas there. I think everyone knows Mo Salah is a lovely pick for game week 1 and probably a potential captaincy option. Palmer in there, another nice pick with good fixtures. Hoping he can rediscover his old form for Chelsea. He did look good towards the end of that Club World Cup, cutting in and playing a little bit more off the right for Chelsea, with maybe Enzo slotting into that central attacking midfield role with a Caicedo and Lavia double pivot. I do also like Saka for the first 2 game weeks. If you are thinking of an early wild card after an early bench boost, which your team might be nicely set up for, potentially a wild card in a game week as early as a game week 3. Cherki, great price. I personally think he starts for Manchester City. The fear is obviously Pep roulette at the beginning of the season. Pep has scuppered me many a times in FPL at the beginning of the season, picking teams that you just don't expect. I thought Cherki again looked good in the Club World Cup games for Manchester City, and he is in that sort of price point where there's not a lot of fantastic options around there for midfielders, so maybe he is worth the risk in for game week 1. Other options that I could give you if you are interested: Kudus maybe at Spurs, McNeil at Everton, Anderson at that cheaper 5.5, and Enzo if you do decide to move off Palmer and are looking for a Chelsea attacker. Your final midfielder in Dye, I like. Good first fixtures for the first 7 for Everton. On penalties, I really like the pick. Forward line, Welbeck, Beto and Solanke. Welbeck, I think, is likely to start game week 1. However, Brighton did obviously sign Kostoulas. I think it was from Olympiacos. and Simas is, I'm butchering these names, Kostulas I should get, being half Cypriot. Simas will likely take some minutes from Welbeck throughout the season. They're being slowly eased into those sort of Brighton pre-season games. I think they're planned to come in for the next couple of pre-season games. They've been working their way up to the full fitness. Given that Brighton have such an intensive high press style of play, I would expect them not to start the first game for Brighton until they get up to speed and get used to Hurtzler's tactics. So Brighton, Danny Welbeck, good for game week 1. Think he will lose some minutes as the season goes on. So just bear that in mind. Beto, again, I think that he's cheap. He's got a good fixtures, so could be a nice pick. However, I'm not sure on the double Everton attack pick here, given that you've got Ndiaye as well. He's obviously not on pens, Beto, so perhaps a Strand Larsen at maybe a slightly higher price point, or Perot at Leeds at 5.5, who will likely be on penalties for Leeds, as it looks like he's taken them off stroke, terrible with names, late last season. Solanke, finally, a great pick at a great price point. Good fixtures for Spurs. I potentially expect him to be taking penalties, given Son might struggle to play too many games this season. And just a quick shout out before we go on to our next team. If you are enjoying this video, please give us a like, subscribe down below to the channel. We're just a small channel trying to grow, and every new subscriber and like for the video is really appreciated. So thank you so much, guys, and let's jump straight back into the video. Thanks so much for submitting your team, John, and you guys can find John at John Flanagan 7136 on YouTube. Moving on to the next team, and that is Airzyn. Airzyn has a goalkeeper line again of Sanchez and Verbruggen. So similar comments again to John there, Airzyn. I've considered Kelleher as a replacement at that 4.5 for the rotation. I'd also consider maybe Darlow at Leeds at 4.0. It looks like from pre-season he's currently starting over Meslier. He did start some games for Leeds at the back end of last season after a lot of mistakes from Meslier in the Championship. So that could be a potential option if you wanted to downgrade and get an extra 0.5 million to use elsewhere. In your backline, Murillo, I love him. Fantastic option. I think he's overpowered with these defensive contributions, averaging around 12 per game. He's going to be picking up 2 points almost every game, really. So that's an additional 40 points in the season for your defender. That's almost 14 assists or almost 7 goals. So that is a crazy stat. I think Murillo, for me, is almost a must-have in the team. I think him or Milenkovic, both good, given Milenkovic has a bit more goal threat as well. AWB, again, fantastic pick, playing in that wing-back role for West Ham. West Ham have some really nice fixtures early on, starting with Sunderland. Gets a lot of tackles in, could potentially pick up some defensive contribution points as well. Gabriel, obviously playing for Arsenal, fantastic defence, good first 2 fixtures, goal threat as well. The only thing at that 6 million price point is that both Gabriel and Saliba don't really get involved in a lot of defensive actions, mostly because Arsenal are so good, keep possession of the ball so much that they don't have to be involved in so many of those defensive actions. So he's unlikely to get too many defensive contribution points. That's why I would actually prefer a Virgil van Dijk at Liverpool. Goals, defensive contributions, and I think Liverpool can be equally as good in defence. Don't mind you going for Gabriel at the end of the day, but that's my personal opinion on there. Konsa, the next one in that back line. Like I said, Aston Villa have good fixtures outside of game week 1. Given that with Ronaldo and Silcott Dubry in your team, it looks like you're not looking to bench boost in game week 1. I think Konsa's a nice pick. Villa have some nice fixtures going forwards. Reynaldo, I think there's a lot better playing 4.0 million defensive options. I think he will be sort of a rotation fullback for Sunderland. What I would suggest is that you look at tall centre-backs from promoted teams who are probably going to be in a lot of defensive actions during the season, I would expect for these promoted teams. The options that I'd give you are Rodon of Leeds that we saw, Jordan Bayer of Burnley. So I think you got Bayer and a Steve at Burnley. I would say Bayer is probably the guy who attacks that first ball and is more likely to get those clearances a little bit more aggressive. Steve covers in behind, a little bit more positional, but also Steve a little bit more nailed on. But I would expect Bayer and Steve to be the starting lineup for Burnley. They have been playing together a little bit more in the preseason games. You could obviously go Bijol of Leeds. He's obviously the most nailed for that Leeds team. He is suspended for game week 1, but given you're not looking to bench boost, he could be nice going forwards as a lock in that Leeds side. So I think Rodon, Bayer, Steve and Bijol, all nice options. My personal pick is probably Bayer of Burnley. Moving on to your midfield, Rodgers I really like. I think he is super underappreciated in drafts at the moment. Still great value at 7 million. He's a 90-minute man playing for a really good team in Villa. Emery loves him. Good team, good fixtures. I think this is a fantastic pick. Mo Salah, no questions. Cole Palmer, as I mentioned, another nice pick with good fixtures. Hopefully he can rediscover his old form. As I mentioned, I also like Saka for those first 2 game weeks. If you are interested, 0.5 million less. Maybe you want to use that 0.5 million and Verbruggen's to upgrade somewhere else. Finally, Brennan Johnson in the midfield. This guy, for me, just defies odds. 0 for potential assists. Generally, just my personal opinion is I hate him as an option. However, he always finds a way of being in the right place, in the right time, and scores goals. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. Europa League final, prime example. Personally, I prefer Kudus at this price. I think he's going to probably play a little bit more. Might take some minutes off Johnson on that right wing as well if Kudus moves over to the right wing. He has played a little bit out there in pre-season as well as in that cam role. Silcott Dubry, fine as a 4.5 million dud on the bench in your midfield. I think if you can upgrade Reynildo, you've got Concert. The defenders are going to be good value on the bench this season and probably will be higher up than those sort of dud midfielders. Up top, Bowen, João Pedro, Solanke. Absolutely love all of these picks. Think Bowen's still great value. Think João Pedro looked amazing in the Club World Cup for Chelsea. I think he did enough to get the start over Delap for game week 1. Nicholas Jackson is suspended game week 1. Obviously a little bit of a minutes risk with Jackson and Delap, but I thought he looked really good for Chelsea and might be a really crucial part of the cog for them this season. Solanke, as mentioned, fantastic pick. All in all, I think a good team. Airzyn, hopefully I've given you a few things to think about. Thanks so much for submitting your team this week. And you guys can find Airzyn at Airzyn, AIRZYN954 on YouTube. Just before we jump on to our final team, if you do want your game week 1 team rated in one of these videos, please post below in the comments with your team name and the social that you want called out below. And I will do my best to get you into one of these videos. And on to our final team of this video, and that is Paul. A shout out to Paul, is one of my members of my channel. Fantastic bloke. Did also purchase a hoodie for Bruno Fernandes. Very comfortable hoodies. He has a somewhat similar team to the previous one of Airzyn, so I do have probably quite a few similar points to make here. Sanchez and Turner in goal. If you're looking for a 4.0 million goalkeeper, I'd go for Darlow at Leeds. I think he's probably the only one that's going to be playing this season. So take out Turner, go for Darlow. I think unless Leeds sign a keeper, which they are looking to do, he's probably likely to start. Murillo, as mentioned, overpowered. My number 1 pick, potentially along with the Tarkovsky. VVD, great pick. Concert, also a nice pick. I think, maybe the one thing I'd say about this defence, and maybe that Gabriel pick a little bit more, is I would strongly consider a Tarkovsky in that team. Everton have such good fixtures over those first few weeks. They got Leeds, Brighton, Wolves, Villa, Liverpool, West Ham, Crystal Palace over the first 7. Like, that's 4 nice defensive fixtures at least in that bunch. Tarkovsky was racking up 12 defensive contribution points per match almost, or 11.5. Like, that's an extra. He picked up an extra 44 points last year. That is crazy. That's 7 goals or 13 assists. I would seriously consider a Tarkovsky over at 5.5 over a Gabriel. I think this new rule for FPL this year could be super overpowered, specifically for defenders. I'm not sure. When I was looking at the stats for midfielders, it looked a lot tighter for them being over the line. Whereas I think defenders might be in a much better spot. So have a think about that one on Gabriel. And then on Zach Johnson, your defence for Sunderland, I reckon you just put in a bit of a fodder. As I mentioned, he's on loan, I think, at Notts County as well from Sunderland this season. On loan at Notts County, so I don't think he's even available to be playing. So yeah, like I said, a lot of better playing 4.0 million defensive options from the promoted teams, tool centre-backs that can get defensive contributions. Therefore, they can be getting 4-pointers even against the tough teams. And when you've got someone on your bench like that, if you're just using them as sort of someone that maybe might need to come in every other week, that could be really useful to have. And what I would say is the defenders this year are almost fixture-proof if you're picking from the tool centre-backs. Because in the games where they have difficult games against difficult teams, they're more likely to be involved in more defensive actions and therefore more likely to pick up those 2 points. So unless you expect these teams to get absolutely obliterated, for example, maybe like a Man City via Sunderland, in those more difficult games, maybe an Aston Villa, a Newcastle, a Chelsea, some of these lower ranked teams might be some decent picks if you can pick one of those tool centre-backs. As I mentioned, Rodon, Jordan Bayer of Burnley, Steve of Burnley, Bijo of Leeds are my probably 4 picks, all tall. Bayer's actually probably the shortest, I think, at 1.85 metres. Everybody else is over 1.9 metres. I like Bayer, I like Rodon. If you're not worried about bench boosting in game week 1, which evidently you are, I think Bijo is also a nice pick for Leeds from game week 2 onwards. Into the midfield, Rodgers, like I said, I really like as a pick. Salah and Palmer, again, I also think good picks. If you do prefer Saka, that's fine as well. Kudus, I think, is really nice. I think he's going to get good minutes for Spurs this season. And then up front, Bowen, João Pedro, and Dendoncker on your bench. I think is fine as a 4.5 million dud given you've got Concert and another defender cover. And those 4.0 million defenders, like I said, are probably better value than than they have been in the past. Up front, Bowen, João Pedro, I love both of them. Fantastic options. Welbeck, as I mentioned earlier, I think it will be good to start in game week 1, but I think for your team, you maybe want to look into somebody else. Potentially, although Wolves don't have the greatest fixtures to start, Jorgen Strand-Larsen on penalties for Wolves, the main striker, I think was really nice value last year, still looks really nice value this year, and will be very low owned. So could be someone that if he starts the season really well, could be a really nice differential pick that you could go for. Otherwise, if you can get the money to go up to a Johan Wissa or a Solanke, that would be really nice. Paul, as usual, thanks so much for sending your team in for this video. And you guys can find Paul at Paul Van Rensburg _ZA on YouTube. Thanks so much, Paul, for also being a member. And on that point, if you do want to become a member, you will be able to be involved in our members giveaway if you become a member before the end of our Game Week 1 live stream. We will be giving away hoodies, shirts, hats, mugs, and they can all be customized with your name and number on the back or with your design. At the moment, I'm wearing a Hunmin song. So thank you, Paul. So conscious I don't want to take up too much of you guys' time. I will just finish with a few overlooked FPL players. I will be doing a video on some key players that I think are good Some of my picks for the goalkeeper section are Kelleher at Brentford, Darlow at Leeds, and Areola at West Ham. In the defenders section, I do love Murillo and Tarkowski due to the overpowered nature of these defensive contribution additional points. I think there are some nice 4.0 million defenders at Leeds and Burnley as well. In the midfield, the couple of interesting picks for me are Cody Gakpo at Liverpool, Elliot Anderson for Nottingham Forest for those defensive contribution points. And up front, I think as a potential differential would be Jorgen Strand Larsen for me. Those are some interesting picks for you guys to take away and consider as you build out some of your drafts. If you do want your Game Week 1 teams rated, please post below in the comments with your team name, the socials that you want called out, and your team. And I will do my best to get you in the next episode of this. Thanks very much for listening, guys. This has been your English Aussie, and have a fantastic game week.